All right, everybody, I'm going to get things underway. Hi, this is Greg Warner. I actually wish I was speaking to you under better circumstances. Maybe we'll do these kinds of chats more often when things, get better. But we thought it would be a good idea for me to. What was happening was I was lining up appointments with customers, and basically I was on the phones or on FaceTime or whatever all day, and I'm thrilled to do that. By the way, if anybody wants to chat with me, please reach out, let your customer success person know, and I'd be happy to hop on a call. But then I realized, wow, I'm saying the same thing over and over again. So why not? Let's see if we'll do a little event here and talk to as many people as possible that want to hear it, and we're going to make it available. We'll put it on a page with slides, the slides and this presentation. So there's going to be a couple of polls coming up also, because we want to find out, get a pulse from you about a couple of topics, and also let you see how others are feeling. And that's pretty much really all of the housekeeping issues. But in case I haven't spoken to some of you in the past, I'm Greg Warner. I'm the CEO and founder, I guess, inventor of this technology that you've been using. And I created the term engagement fundraising when I started the business. And we'll also talk about fundraising climate change a little bit as we go into this. So remember, you can ask questions at any time. I may not be able to answer them until the end, but if it's relevant and I see it, I will. So thank you all. Thanks for joining us. And I think I'm going to start out by mentioning that we all have a great deal of empathy for all of you. And in fact, that's why we're doing this. Us at MarketSmart, I mean, we're doing actually fabulously well. Not to make anyone feel bad, because I know what you're all dealing with, some heavy issues. And in a way, this is essentially what I developed this technology for, is for big problems that would drive nonprofits to have to engage with their donors more digitally and in a more refined, personalized, relevant, and less solicitous fashion. So interestingly, we're getting more calls and contracts signed now than ever, and that's good for us. But that's not your concern. You're probably somewhere between survival mode and thrive mode. And I mean, if you're, we know some organizations that work with us that are just being inundated with support and donations, and then there's others like zoos that there's a zoo we've been working with that is literally trying to figure out how they're going to feed the animals, like next week, and others. So it's sad. We hate to see people in that survival mode. So hopefully the points that I give you, no matter where you fit, will be able to help you. And some of the stories I've been hearing, I mean, I was just talking to Girl Scouts, and the last week of their drive with the cookies is basically zeroed out because of this. So I told them that I would buy $100 million of cookies. No, that's a bad joke. So, all right. So we're taking the poll here, see where people are. It's most people, it seems, are in the somewhere in between. So, okay, that's good. Plus, you're also probably dealing with the fact that you're getting readjusted to your home and working from home if you weren't already, and figuring out the computers and all this kind of stuff. So here's the end of the poll. I'm going to share those results. You can see it's mostly somewhere in between. So that's good. And I'm sad for those in survival mode, but I promise some of this should help you. Okay. So I'm going to stop sharing that. All right. So yeah, we conducted that poll. The other thing that's happening that's giving me a lot of empathy for you is that I've seen so much information coming out at fundraisers that is oftentimes conflicting. You know, some people are saying ask, 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 and solicit, solicit. Others are saying no, now's not the time to solicit. Now's the time to engage and steward and cultivate. So it's like, what is the real answer to this question of what are you supposed to do? There's just so much information out there and it's coming fast and furious. So in the end, what's you have to distill the information and decide what's really right for your organization. It's really, it depends on what sector you're in, where you are on that continuum of thrive or survive, and you know your donors best. So just remember that there, although there is all that information flying out at you, you know what's best. Just take it and distill it, and then come to a conclusion. I believe that's the best way to go. And especially even with this presentation, I don't have a silver bullet for you. So take what I'm about to say and use it, or put some of it aside. Now, just to lay out for you, for some of you who, or most of you probably, use our whole system with the automated emails, and you probably already know that we paused the automation, at least for this week, and probably for next week too. I guess I could say I apologize that I didn't ask anybody's permission. I just took action and did that. But I think it was the right move. I haven't heard one complaint about me doing that. If anything, I've only heard people thanking me because everybody had so much to do and so many other things to concentrate on that honestly, a lot of folks had forgotten that automation was happening. And we wouldn't know exactly what messages would be going out when. So we figured that we would just pause it and then figure out what's happening later. And we'll make that decision. And in fact, let's ask you right now, when do you think that we should restart your automated emails? So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes, a couple seconds, 10, 20 seconds to take a look at that. Please give us your feedback. All right. This is interesting. Okay. I'll give you another 5 seconds. 4, get your votes in. 2, 1. All right. So it looks like very few are feeling that we should do next week, but instead it's somewhere between 2 weeks and 1 month from now. So, and by the way, you can let us know individually, you can let your customer success manager know what you would prefer. So, and yeah, it looks like 50% say not sure. Okay. So this is helpful. Thank you. All right, so let's get to some recommendations. You know, it's fascinating because I always thought there would be a slow creep to a change in the nonprofit sector. I always called that fundraising climate change in my book. And we've seen that there are fewer donors, but the revenue from those fewer donors is still amounting to more revenue each year. In other words, nonprofits are raising more money each year, but among less donors. And I called this fundraising climate change. It's basically because there's been diminished trust in this sector, sadly, and people are no longer interested in being spammed or junk mailed and evented to death, if you will. And now events everything happens so fast now. It's not really a climate change. It just happened, cataclysmic, and the events, poof, they're disappeared, and everybody has to make a change, and most of it's moving into a digital realm. So this is a good time, if you've never seen them before on my blog or somewhere else, to reacquaint ourselves with our 10 commandments of engagement fundraising, which I won't read all this to you, but if you want it, you can ask us and we'll send you this tile. It tends to, when I post this on social media, it tends to get the most shares, and sometimes, you know, several thousand, maybe even upwards of 10,000 views. But the idea is that although you're on the line together, you're actually competing with one another. And you're also competing with share of wallet from other organizations, well, private sector. And zeroing in on the people who have capacity and high passion is really the key to using your limited resources efficiently. So we recommend focusing on the major and legacy donors, of course, which all of you, if you're working with us, are doing, and investing heavily in a customer service, engagement-oriented outreach and attitude. And when you speak with folks, you recognize from Dr. Russell James' research and the things that I've posted that people are really engaging with your cause because they want to find meaning in their lives and they want to be the hero of their own life story. So in order to do that, you've really got to leverage technology to engage with people, which you're probably doing more now than you ever have. And we believe that surveys are the best way to start the conversation. It's like a first date. And I'll tell you, we've been seeing for the surveys that have gone out since this pandemic had hit, we've seen in some cases even double the response rate and double the opens and clicks and whatnot. Maybe not for everybody, but almost everybody is seeing an increased engagement level. So if you were thinking about not doing a survey, just know that it's a good idea to do it. People are starved for conversation and outreach right now, and they want engagement. They may not want crass solicitation essentially yet or ever, but they do want some form of outreach and a way to provide feedback. So offering that to folks is good right now. Of course, we are tweaking the surveys that are going out to make them more relevant for the times, okay? And in fact, there are some where if, for instance, you need to fund respirators, I mean, to be really perfectly in line with certain needs of today, then you can add that as a survey question, not just asking about whether or not they might consider giving assets, but would they be willing to step up and fill the void? Or knowing that, for instance, Girl Scouts, you know, lost that last week, would they be willing to step up and fill that void? And so on. So when you do then your follow-up, especially if you've already done a survey, either recently, soon, or in the distant past, you're going to want to look at that information so that when you engage with folks, especially your top prospects, you're going to want to engage with them as if you know them, and you can point out that you were told that they took a survey some time ago and point out when it was, and show them that you know them and that you're paying attention to them, and they'll appreciate that. And then if you really want to get smart with it, you look at their donor behaviors and look at the people who are reaching out to, or I should say, engaging on your VIP microsite recently, or engaging with emails recently, because recency is the greatest indicator of likelihood that someone will reach out to you because they're recently engaged, they've recently downloaded something. And you also, the last part I'm going to skip really is that you want to provide some type of value to people. But I'm going to come back to this in just a minute. So we'll talk to that. So we already talked about readiness being the key. You probably are familiar with your dashboards and your pipelines. You're going to want to start with the people who say that that they've already given, your legacy society members first. Of course, if you have thousands of leads, like many of you do, you simply can't talk to everybody on a one-to-one basis. But readiness is the key for outreach. And you can, of course, if you need help revisiting your dashboard, just reach out to your customer success manager. They can help you sort. It can be a lot more than just this basic view or this one, where you're looking at an individual. Recognize, please, that there's new sorting features. And if you haven't become familiar with the sorting features at the top and have not created your saved sorting filters, I recommend that you do that now, because, for instance, you may want to sort your leads based on perhaps age and likelihood that they have stated verbatim that they would like to make an impact through giving appreciated assets. So if you're in planned giving, that might be different. You may not be able to talk to someone, but if you look through that dashboard, I would recommend passing on that lead of someone who's interested in giving appreciated assets. Pass that on to your major gift team. They would probably really appreciate that right now, especially. So the next recommendation is that if you're looking at budgets, and this is a little self-serving, clearly, because we're part of your budget, but I really recommend that you try your best to make your changes with a scalpel and not a sledgehammer. Let's not panic. Let's recognize that what we're doing, if it's used properly, is very, very low cost and high return on investment for generating massive dollars, especially with major gifts now and legacy gifts in the future. So if you need help supporting your pitch to leadership about your budget, we're happy to help. We can help you create the filters, the lists, and opportunity analysis, showing predictions of revenue and whatnot. We're here to help you keep your budget. Also remember, along the lines of not panicking, this is what some in the stock market world will call a black swan event. There was a book, I can't remember which downturn in the stock market that led to a book. It was called Black Swan. And it's really all about these types of events, how in hindsight, we kind of should have seen it coming. There's a video floating around of Bill Gates talking about how the biggest thing that we should be worried about, and this was 4 years ago, is a pandemic. And some took heed, some not so much, and here we are. So in hindsight, a black swan event is something that in hindsight maybe we should have seen, but we didn't. And we always recover from these. The nation does, people do. Sadly, people do get hurt. It is terrible that happens, but hopefully it's not as bad as some of the predictors are saying. And in fact, just some history is that during the Great Recession of 2008, giving as a whole declined by about 7%, and then by 6% in 2009. Now, this is not good news, but the stock market was down at least 30%. Maybe it'll keep going down, but if giving holds tight and like it has in historic times, then maybe it won't be as bad as we were thinking that it might be. Also, giving tends to mirror the gross domestic product. And when we had these downturns, it only dropped a teeny tiny bit. So it basically still mirrored the gross domestic product. So hopefully that gives some folks a little bit of solace. You may have seen those stats from others flying around. I believe that eventually supporters will be tired of hearing about this, and they'll actually be looking for other things to engage with, and they're going to be tired of this news. So I want to remind you that we're happy to help with other efforts that are non-solicitous but highly engaging. Like our legacy journal effort is one where we basically offer your supporters a workbook to help them think about their memoirs and write down their memoirs and kind of begin to create a legacy journal that they can pass on to their loved ones that explains why they did things they did in their lives and what made them the person they became and what charities they support and why, and so on. So it's a very powerful campaign. It's a great conversation starter when people download that. It's a good reason to reach out to them and talk to them about how they see their legacy and how they might want to make impact as they're finalizing their wishes for their life and finding meaning in their life. Another might be our survey report effort, which is rarely used, but it is interesting because people like to know what your survey has found. And it's the power of social norms. They want to know what others in their tribe are thinking and what they believe in and what they want to support and how they would want to support it. The rollover IRA, I prefer to actually call it a QCD effort nowadays, is also popular, or a DAF effort for raising big dollars. Although there may be some changes in the tax code that may make the rollover IRA not as big a deal, but I believe that people of means will still want to give their RMD to charity. Also, if you really need a appointment, then you could consider a door opener. That is not a approved, let me say, an approved to sell effort right now. So we would only do that on special request. But anyway, some ideas for you for outreach. Next is that if you're gonna do something either on your own or you're gonna ask us to do something, I'm going to highly recommend that you don't ask people to leave your organization in their will as a direct solicitation right now. I commented on this on Facebook because Ole Miss did send out it was a pretty straightforward solicitation asking people to leave the college in their will, and it was not exactly received well by anybody. So what I'm saying is that's what we would call a transparent solicitation. It's very straightforward. It's good to be clear with people sometimes, but not right now. And usually I would only recommend that kind of solicitation to people in your dashboard who said that they're considering that type of gift. I wouldn't send that to everybody as this institution did. They just kind of splattered that to their whole list. It's really never a good ask for your entire list. Rather, what you want to do is you want to give to people. You want to provide value to them with content. You want to ask for advice with a survey, and then you want to sort of segment your list to determine who is possibly ready for that kind of solicitation. Most people will not be in that category. So that means most of the time, it's not a good idea to do a direct, transparent solicitation for legacy giving. Rather, you want to use opaque offers, which are the kind that we usually recommend for asking for advice or giving some sort of value, usually content. Now, what makes this a little bit confusing is that if some of you may have seen me post about this or write about it, but the term, the search term in Google of how to make a will, people typing that phrase into Google is at the highest point that it has ever been at. This score of 0 to 100, that's a range. And what it means is 100 is the all-time high. So it's there right now. We've never seen it so high. And that may make it confusing because you're thinking, well, if people are searching for this, why don't we just, tell them to leave us in their will? But that's not it. You see, they're looking for information about how to make a will. So you might be able to offer folks, you might be able to post something on social media or email them saying that you have resources that they can use. And if you have our VIP microsite, that page is there. It's just sitting there. So, your social media team can, if they get, they got to be considerate about how they word it and put it out there. But at this time, it might be an okay idea to at least offer the content to people. However, remember that it's usually best to offer that content to people who are already considering making this kind of gift. It's very hard to move people from not considering or who say that they'll never consider it all the way to making a will, including your organization, all in one step. So like I said, you have that information on your website. So let's move on to tips for engaging your supporters. Is number one, you want to start off the conversation with empathy for them. They may be having empathy for you, and then you can get to that later. But generally, it's probably best for you to talk about, or ask about, I should say, them. And as we get into the Q&A, and if you have comments now in the chat, feel free to type in what you've been doing and how you've been doing it. I'll be sharing that with others. But just asking people how they're doing, are they safe? Where are their grandchildren? Are they able to engage with them? Last night, in fact, with my in-laws, we had an iPad up and we did FaceTime, and they were at the end of the dinner table and we were all there, and it was fun. It was actually great. But next, as you're showing empathy, let them know that you're the conduit. You're the eyes and ears for them in the institution or organization. You're there to serve them, and you can help them understand what's going on. You can ask questions, but you've got to listen and try not to talk so much. Most of you already know this because you're professionals, is that you should talk maybe 20-25% of the time and let them do the rest. Now, interestingly, is that people may start asking you questions, of course, and I recommend that you consider, in some cases, responding to their questions with questions of your own. In other words, don't just answer the question, because they might, you don't know why they're really asking the question. It's challenging to know, and you may end up answering the wrong question. In other words, if someone says, well, how is your organization doing? How are you going to get through this? And then you just start answering the question, well, maybe what the reason they're really answering this is because they're wondering, sorry, my dog just walked in here and I'm on a live webinar. So my apologies. So the reason that they might be asking that question is because they're actually thinking about how they can make impact and how they can support the mission. So if you just go into talking about how you're doing, it could be really that you missed an opportunity whereby if they asked you that question and you asked, gee, that's a great question. We're hearing that question a lot. I guess before I answer it, I just am curious why you're asking that. What are you hoping to find out specifically? And so see that back and forth, just a little bit of responding to a question with another question can help you peel that layer a little bit deeper to really understand why they're asking it. So then, of course, you, as a professionals, you all know you want to learn about their needs. But here's the thing is you really want to try to find a way to offer them something of value. It could be content, it could be a link to a video, it could be a report or maybe a recording from your leadership about what's going on. But especially if you've prepared this in advance, which I recommend you do, is that you sit down and think about a menu and prepare packages of ways that people can help. So for instance, if you're in the medical space, there might be something that people can step up and literally buy for the community hospital. Buy, invest in, if you will. There might be a package of things. There might be, meals. You can support 100 meals for X and Y, or blankets and so on. So if you sit back and think about what kind of a menu you could put together, and then you could ask people if they would consider taking a look at a menu that you all have prepared to help people consider ways that they might want to help. And then just send that as a PDF to them. It doesn't have to be beautiful. It just has to be clear and understandable of what people can do to step up and make impact. Okay, so oftentimes people forget to actually give that to supporters. And if you don't, it's kind of like going to being a waiter at a restaurant. Someone sits at your table and you don't have a menu for them. It's not a hard solicitation, really. The waiter just gives you the menu and then you order. So those are my ideas for you, and I'm ready to open this up. It looks like there might be some questions already in here, so I guess I better start taking a look at that. And if anybody on my team wants to team me up, that's fine as well. Someone is asking me to send cookies, no problem. That's not exactly what I was hoping to see, so bear with me just a second. And okay. So what changes do we see coming that might make the QCD less attractive? Okay, so I haven't seen if any of the laws have actually changed yet, but it may be that people will not have to take their RMD. They won't be forced to take their RMD whatsoever. So if they're not having to do that, then they will have sort of less of a week to, or less of a reason to consider doing a QCD, if that makes sense. I hope you all understand what I'm talking about. If they are of capacity, if they have means though, then they'll still, whether they're forced to take their required minimum distribution or not, they still might like the idea of giving money that they may not need anymore to support your cause, especially now. It's not really like a DAF where the money has to go to charity, but it has been pre-saved, and if they don't need it anymore, they already got their, they might want to give it to you, is what I'm saying. So those are the kind of changes. All right, next one. Yeah,
I'm just going to jump in here real quick. This
sure.
is Jen Lillette. I do want to note that actually, I think Tim Andrews, thank you for being on top of that. I think the act actually did just pass the House.
Oh, it did.
So it's likely
Okay.
that that might happen, but I want to specify that as far as I know, as far as I've read all over the place, this is just for this year. It's temporary. It's a measure to help people now, given the situation. It's not necessarily to say that RMDs are going to be gotten rid of at all. Just wanted to make that clarification.
Of course. Yep. Okay, let's see other questions here. I'm seeing also that most people are wondering, yeah, okay, about who's to sell. Okay, so any other questions, please? Any other thoughts? Is anyone running into problems with engaging with supporters, or are they finding that supporters are actually accepting their outreach? That's one thing I'm curious about on your end. Should organizations still move forward with a leave a legacy month on organic social channels and possibly target their MarketSmart lists? Well, that's a it depends kind of question. Elsa, if it depends, when is that going to be? If it's this month or April, I would say that you might want to pass it back just a little bit. You might want to push it back just a little bit. I really don't think that we should push that back forever, though. This is people are going to want to move to a state of normalcy. I really believe that. Okay. Keep scrolling through the questions here. I'm seeing a lot of supporters are very happy to hear personally from staff. And also everybody, the supporters have been supportive. Interesting. That's good comment. Yeah, an offer of planning resources with no ask. Yeah, that's a question of, can you offer planning resources without an ask? You can. I believe in a soft ask where you give people the choices of, where are you in the consideration process is the way we generally do it, where it's a, either I'll never include your organization all the way up to I already did it or I'm considering doing it now. So again, though, I believe that kind of offer should be provided mostly to people who have already said that they're at the stage of the consideration process where they are considering it, especially offering that now. We should target probably fewer people. But you can offer the estate planning resources. I would just be careful with it. I would offer more engagement-oriented outreach, like a tell your story effort or a one of the others that I was talking about earlier. How are organizations using their websites to stay engaged with their donors and potential donors during this time? Well, I believe that, well, and I'm assuming that you're meaning that those are the MarketSmart VIP sites, not their entire websites. So with us, I would say that people should be monitoring their websites and seeing who's clicking on them and looking around to see if some of the people who took the survey in the past are clicking and are showing up as hot, as if, for instance, if they recently downloaded bequest language, and of course you can see that in our dashboard. So if you see that, then you're going to want to reach out to that person, but you don't want to be creepy about it, So you're going to want to weave that into your call, not really specifically talking about the fact that they did that, because of course you don't want to creep them out. But otherwise, we're really not making drastic changes to the websites or the web pages. We can make minor changes if you really feel it's necessary. However, by the time we get a lot of these done, things may already be flattening out, and then it may not, it may have been all for naught. Okay. So I hope that's a good answer and or a helpful answer. But if you have a more specific question, just throw it out there and I'll try to answer that. Let's see. Interestingly, Donna's saying the supporters are calling her. Some heartbreaking stories. Yeah, I'm sure. All right. So I'm seeing, yes, many clients don't have budget now to add additional engagements, offers, you know, additional increase their budget. For us, of course, that makes perfect sense. However, we have been hearing that some that canceled an event, they sort of have found money. It's not really an even. How do I say this? It's not a zero-sum game. All of a sudden, they're finding that they can move things around, and they are thinking that, in fact, there was an organization we were talking to yesterday that has $900,000 that they need to raise in the next few weeks. Now, they did have an event scheduled that got canceled, but that event was not going to net $900,000 anyway. So the event got canceled, but they're looking at how can they use our system to, with just a couple of tweaks here and there, to making sure that the content is up to date and relevant. But how can they use our system, especially with the survey, to generate leads and to ask in the survey for where people reside in the consideration process for supporting the fact that they have lost all that revenue, and would they be interested in stepping up? So while there are some that may have sunk costs in direct mail and everything, others that may have lost some money in events, but there are some that we're hearing from that are really interested in just kind of pivoting and trying to find those needles in the haystack. Okay. So let's see, Tony, would pursuing gifts from DAFs be a good idea in the current environment? I believe wholeheartedly that pursuing gifts from DAFs is always a good time. I've been kind of screaming from the mountaintops about this for maybe 8 or 10 years. And if you all do not have the DAF widget that I invented a few years ago, I recommend that you go to dafwidget.com, DAFWIDGET, dafwidget.com. It's a free it's a free script. It's a line of code essentially that you give to your team and ask them to please put that DAF widget next to the Donate Now button. It's so simple, and it helps people that have a donor advised fund. Like if they go on your website, they're generally going to find the Donate Now button, and then they're going to pull out their credit card and give you $100, right? Maybe a little more. But if they've already put aside $100,000 or $500,000 in their donor advised fund, doesn't it make sense to have a link right there next to the Donate Now button so that they remember that they did that? And so we remove the friction from the giving process so that they can give from their donor advised fund just as seamlessly as they do giving from their credit card? I believe so. So if you get that script, then you'll be able to get DAF gifts that'll be thousands and thousands of dollars right there instead of getting $100 from a credit card. Also, you might want to consider doing some marketing around DAF giving. Of course, if you've had our system for any period of time, and I hope you didn't delete the question where we find out if people have a donor advised fund and would be willing to give from there. So they are your low hanging fruit. And if you need help sorting your data, just reach out to a customer success manager and we'll help you look through your data and understand who are the people that have DAFs. Remember, this system is the only way pretty much at scale that you can determine who among your supporters have a donor advised fund. Okay, we collect that. Otherwise, it's pretty much anonymous and you're not going to find it out from Fidelity or Vanguard. Let's see if there's any other questions here. I think we're pretty much running down. Many of them have been answered and there's some duplicates, if you will. So I guess we'll just leave it out here saying that if you have, well, let's give it one more minute to put in some questions. If you don't have any more, then we'll just wrap it up. I'm seeing that some people are really, really appreciative of the QCD option that we've developed. If you haven't learned about that, please reach out to your customer success manager. It's unbelievably powerful and is working super well. It's so I would take a look at that in specific. I would not pull back. I'm seeing one here on doing surveys. We are seeing exceptional results at this time. I think people are starved for this kind of engagement. So that'll about wrap it up today. Thank you all for joining us. Again, if you have other questions, you can either reach out to me individually or to your customer success manager. And we thank you all for being customers of ours and putting your trust in us. We're here to help, and we want to help you thrive, not just survive. Thank you, everybody.